Megan, my newest friend, welcome to the On Purpose podcast. How are you doing today?
I am fabulous. How are you?
I'm great. I watched a bunch of your content this morning. I feel all fire. I feel like I need to go out and be kind around the world, more random acts of kindness. Who doesn't want that in their day?
That's the point.
Yes, I love it. Um, I gotta tell you, I just love like when I looked at your stuff, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna sit down and talk with her today. It just put me in such a good mood to be around somebody that realizes small things in the world make such a huge difference.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think that beyond kindness is just kind of my overall philosophy in life, especially my personal life and my mental health and stuff, is just noticing all of the small things and what a difference they make.
I love it. But now here, I got to tell you before we get too deep into this, because we got a lot of great stuff for the community today. We got to warm you up. It's kind of like a workout, right? Like you got to
Oh,
get
yeah.
loose
Okay.
before you get going.
Okay.
So
Let's do it.
this helps me and our team get to know who you are, because believe it or not, these are important questions. Everybody wants to know this stuff.
Oh, yeah. Give it to
All
me.
right, Megan, here you go. You are stranded on a deserted island for the rest of your life. You're getting one food. What is it you
Oh.
want to eat?
Oh, you know what? I've thought about this so much, and it's always a toss between sushi and Mexican food,
Oh, yeah,
which are so different, but both so good.
fish
You know
tacos.
what? Maybe it's Mexican food because you got to imagine that if you're on an island and you learn how to fish, then you're going to already have sushi. So
Mm.
I'm going to go with Mexican food.
Well, wait, I think on a technicality now, you just played that to where you get two foods because you're going to have
I
sushi
know.
and Mexican. All right. Well,
I did. I just played that.
I will tell you, in 212 episodes, you're the first one that twisted it and got two foods. So
I
congratulations.
know. Thank you very much.
All right. Next question. You get
Yeah,
one superpower. What do you want to have and why would you want it?
I already know the answer to this question. I definitely would want to be able to speak every single language in the world
Mm.
because I am super passionate about connecting with people when I travel. And it would just really take that initial barrier away if I just immediately was able to talk to so many people.
Wow. That is a good one. That's really good. Favorite
It
book?
is. The Little Prince.
Ooh,
Have you ever
what?
read that?
I have not. What's it
Um,
about?
it's Um, I won't even give it away. It's kind of like a kid's book, but it's of course it's a hero's journey and it's really fun to me because I speak Spanish and when I was like learning Spanish, I it was the first book that I ever read in another language.
Very nice.
It's very meaningful if no matter what language you read it in. The Little
Mm.
Prince.
I love it. I love speaking Spanish. I'm very novice at it, but we did a
Muy
month and
bien.
yeah, muy bien.
Muy
Uh,
bien.
I agree with, I gotta go back to your superpower. I think if we could just all communicate, we would
Mhm.
have such deeper relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I'm traveling in Spanish speaking countries, it really is neat to feel more connected to the people and the place because I'm able to talk to them versus
Hmm.
when I travel other places that I don't speak the language, it's a little harder.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. When we did a month in Costa Rica and just traveling through, and even if I goofed it up, I think they truly appreciated I at least tried.
Yeah, I think that that's there.
All right, you get to have dinner with one person. Who is it and what do you want to ask them?
Oh my gosh. Well, this is where it gets sad. My dad unfortunately passed away when I was in my early 20s. And I think that I went kind of full throttle into a self-discovery um session in my life the last like 11 or 12 years since that happened, and I think that I would love to have dinner with my dad now that I'm a little bit older and wiser and I know what kind of questions I would want to ask, and there were just so many things that I never got to learn about him when I was younger.
Mm. Yeah, that'd be powerful. Yeah, I should have seen that one coming based on my research, huh?
I love powerful conversations.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because your kindness, and this is what I love about the journey of life, is you got on the path you're currently on when you've went through some tragedy and felt like you hit rock bottom. So talk to us about that journey. We freeze up there.
We did freeze up. Yeah, I was just waiting for that to, you're good now.
Oh, okay. Um, so your current journey came from tragedy and a place where you thought you were hitting rock bottom to spring back up. So talk us through that process.
Yeah, man. Life really has hit me hard a number of times. I was in my early 20s when my dad had died in an aviation accident. So it was very sudden. And there were a number of years there, I think, when I was just trying to like fight my way through that because it was so tragic and unexpected. And there were so many things that had happened as a result of that. So by the time I hit my 30s, I really had finally gotten past like these initial stages of grief and was kind of able to function again, but it really changed my mentality, you know. I really had kind of started to see that life is so short and we have limited time to do things that really matter with our time and leave a legacy behind that we are fond of. So it just kind of made me reevaluate everything through that lens. And I had spent many years as a journalist, and while you might call me like successful, traditionally successful, I didn't necessarily feel successful because I didn't feel that, what I was doing was close enough related to humanity and making a difference. And I just had this like craving or higher calling to something that I felt like mattered, if you will. But I
Interest.
wasn't really sure what that would be.
So how did you, first off, what did you recognize? Like, what were the signs coming to you that you're like, wait a second, I want something bigger than what I'm doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think really the nature of media changed over time. And as the rise of the digital era has come to be, things have just more and more started to feel more disposable. And working in the online space, I would put a ton of effort into writing stories that would just publish one day and then they would be wiped clean the next. And it's like you could hear a pin drop. I wasn't noticing anybody reading my stories and being like, wow. And so I'm like, man, I'm really just kind of getting by. I'm not exactly changing lives with what I'm doing here. And I don't think that the news overall has a very positive effect on people. So I almost felt like I was part of the problem. And so I just, it's like you just have this inner voice that sometimes like gets louder and louder and louder, and you can't really ignore it until you're like, okay, I need to do something about this.
I love that. I was literally just talking about that in a different episode about giving yourself permission to listen to that voice,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I think sometimes, well, let me share this thought with you, and then I want you to get your thoughts on it. I think sometimes we feel guilty if we have that voice, right? I think
Oh my
sometimes,
gosh, of course.
right, it means like, oh my God, I'm unhappy. I'm not grateful. I'm not satisfied. Why can't I just appreciate what's around me? So we quiet our dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. I had all of those thoughts because when I exited college and took some time to meditate on what I wanted to do and started dabbling in the journalism field, I was like, yes, 100, let's go. I like moved myself to New York City and hustled my way from one publication to the next, and before you know it, I was like International Business Times check, BBC check, Yahoo, USA Today. I was just really like racking up the publications. And that's what I thought that I wanted, was to be a widely published writer. And it was almost like I checked that box, but I worked my butt off to make that happen. And then I also was doing some travel journalism stuff. So I was like getting paid to travel the world and write about it. And I was like, man, you've got to be crazy if you would give this up, because you're eating off a silver spoon here, like going on these amazing adventures, like writing about it, working for these publications, living in New York. If you would ever give this up, because this is like the dream for some people, you've got to be absolutely nuts. But for me, it was just like I just started getting more and more depressed, because I just felt like, man, this does not have a lot of meaning. And I think intrinsically it always has to do with, who you are as a person, how you form and come to be, what's impacted your life that kind of shifts your perspective. And for me personally, I was just like, okay, maybe I'm starting to figure out that there's just got to be something else.
And you gave yourself grace to explore that.
It was hard, yeah, but I did.
Yeah, I think it's very hard, right? For any of us that have like these kind of like what you said, like barometers of success. If I achieve this, I'm successful. If I achieve that, I'm successful. I think it's really hard to challenge yourself and say, wait a second, this isn't my success. It's not the success I want.
Yeah, I didn't know that though. I was thinking,
No.
I don't know, I think I thought in my mind earlier, like, okay, if I become like a great journalist and I write for all these publications, I'm going to be successful. And once I'm successful, I'm going to feel great. That's what I thought. And then it was like I did it, and then I didn't feel great.
No, that's outcome based, right? Like we're putting our happiness based on certain outcomes
Hmm.
versus the journey to get there.
Yeah.
Right, like
Yeah.
the true happiness many times is in these small conversations. Like if I just tell my audience, like, I'm going to be happy when the On Purpose podcast reaches this number of listeners, well, then I don't find the happiness in getting to talk with Megan today and just enjoy this moment right here.
Yeah. Whoopsies on my part. When
No,
I
I
was
think
younger, though,
we all do
I
it.
just was really entrenched by this idea of success. And I was very highly influenced by outside sources, because I was thinking, oh, I went to college. That must mean that, like, I got to become a hardworking American who becomes something of a becomes something. I got to have that like American dream story of like Megan started at the bottom and worked her way up, and you know.
Yes, and was miserable doing it at the end, right? Right, like nobody
maybe
tells you
maybe
that.
at the end, I mean, it wasn't, not all of it was a miserable
No.
process. I was happy at a time. I was
Yep.
fulfilled at a time, and it was just a very important time in my life. But then that time also came to pass, and with the death of my father, like it just really changed me a
Yeah.
lot too.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't mean like the whole thing was miserable. I think like a lot of American stories are like we hear this when people are at their deathbed, like, man, I wish I'd have had more of this in life. I wish I'd have worked less and experienced this more. I think a lot of us get caught up in pursuing the things only to find out at the end, we're like, wait a second, that wasn't the story I wanted.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah, it happens.
how did you find the confidence then to buck the trend? How did you find that inside you to go, wait a second, I'm going to allow myself permission to turn and shift to a whole new set of goals and dreams and ideas?
Honestly, you put that so elegantly.
All right. First off, there's two things you don't usually hear, me and elegance together. So I'll take that as
Yeah,
a
but that
compliment.
was just so elegant versus I reflect back on that time of my life, and it was just such a hot mess, because I tend to be somebody who's very rebellious and stubborn, and when something is not vibing, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore.
I love it.
There was no plan, and there was no plan. I just woke up one day and was like, I can't do this anymore. And then I just quit.
I love it. I love it. So when you quit, what was your next step? Did you go like, is that when you went backpacking in Europe or what did you do?
Gosh, I I moved to Los Angeles.
That's kind of like backpacking in Europe.
I moved to Los Angeles. I just love that you're breaking this down for me because you would think that humble traveler. Okay, you're back. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yep. So you would
Okay.
think,
Okay. Oh yeah, so the core of my being is more the backpacker, the humble traveler, the one that loves to adventure and scurry about, but I was like, let's move to Los Angeles. I think I was thinking another big city would serve me good. It was closer to home. There's a lot of opportunities there. Um, I think I was thinking that I was going to find new um, inspiration there. And um, no, I think it honestly just made me more depressed because I was so lost, you know. I had had some savings but I had completely just backed away from journalism and then went into this like dark night of the soul moment where I was like, okay, what are we doing here? I just really wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. I was just so lost.
yeah,
I was so lost and wasn't sure what was going to come next for me. Um, and I got a co-working space membership and I would just go there.
yeah.
And I don't even remember what I did there because I
So
wasn't working. So,
yeah, I love that story of not knowing, right? I think I'll tell you in my life, some of the best things that have happened is when I give up control of the wheel and I just go. Like I'm like, I don't really know where this is gonna end, but it seems like it's gonna be a good ride. And I think
mhm.
too many times we try to control so many things that are out of our control. But one of the things I wanted to explore with you is um that I saw you said when you were in like some of your darkest moments, you realized you hadn't worked through forgiving,
Yeah,
specifically your brother's passing and the woman
yeah,
responsible. So how did forgiving and finding that forgiveness later, because it had been quite a while that you carried that, I believe.
a long time, really long time. Yeah. Well, I think part of what happened, oh my gosh, this is just like I just feel like I don't really live a super linear life where it's like A to B leads to C. It's like, here's this mess, and somehow I found my way through it.
Right.
But in that dark night of the soul moment, I started going to therapy. And when I was in therapy, I was like, oh, we're going to talk about career development and what it's like to be single and, just all of these things. But nope. Turns out when you go to therapy and you pick a goal, even though you focus on that goal, you have to deal with all the other things that are like disrupting your life. So for me, it was like I'm experiencing depression and I'm thinking, oh, it's just because of my wayward career path, but there was all these other things that were feeding into that. And so in therapy it's like, okay, let's dismantle your life
Mm,
and um, work through everything one by one. And part of what I share in my personal story is that my brother was killed when I was very young, which again was very disruptive and traumatic. And grief is one of those things that you carry with you for a lifetime. It's never going to be something that I get over. It's just going to be something that lives with me that I'll continue to work through in whatever season and shape it takes on. And I realized, there was still a space in my heart where I had not forgiven the woman that killed him. And that was just a big part of my pain. So in addition to all these other wonderful problems I was having, I was also just like, okay, I guess we have to go back
mhm.
to my childhood self and reparent them a little bit and walk them through this very mature process that we call death um and coach them through it now as an adult. And part of that was some different practices and things that I had adopted to really forgive and let go of this woman.
And what did by finally allowing yourself to forgive, what did that do to you? Did it open things up? Like how did you feel when you finally got to that point?
You know, I did feel a little lighter. I even feel a little lighter now that I don't have to live with that. And it's really taught me so much about compassion for other people and how we can just invite more compassion into our lives and how much ease that compassion provides to us, even through like the deepest trauma.
Did you end up speaking with her, or you just like emotionally forgave her and said you're not going to carry it anymore?
Yeah. You know, I don't think sometimes when you go to forgive somebody that you necessarily have to have that direct conversation with that person, because I think that these people also like live inside our heads.
Yeah.
And so I had a few different meditations that I would go through. You know, I would of course process it in therapy, but also go through different meditation sequences to learn how to let go of it as well.
What would you like? What's your go-to meditation for if you're working through something? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. The loving kindness meditation is really powerful. And it's where you sit with yourself and the mantra is like, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be well, and may you be loved.
Love it.
And you envision different people in your mind, and the first person that you envision or animal is somebody that's like really easy to love. And then you envision somebody neutral that you have no relationship with. And then you envision the person that you need to forgive and have this mantra with them. And then you envision yourself in the end. And I think that I overall learned that, you know, forgiveness isn't an endorsement. It's not saying, hey, this person killed my brother and that's okay. It just says that, like, I'm no longer going to live with the pain of this person's choices and how they impacted me.
Yeah.
I'm going to let that pain go.
Yeah. We're no longer going to hold that space for that pain, right? We're going to
Hmm.
release it. Oh, I love it. And that's one of my favorite meditation mantras as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I saw you light up when I said that.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite, like, because it does shift your perspective a little bit, right? And it lets you just be in the moment. And yeah, I'm just sitting here, I'm trying to think like, what is that next question? And I just love
Oh, I can share something.
share it.
And then I think the next phase of healing from that grief for me was, you know, I can't, when someone kills your family member, it's like that is just irreplaceable, that
Mhm.
person that you lost. And you can go through everything you can go through to forgive them, and maybe you might. And then the next question is, okay, well, I can't undo what they did, but in a certain sense I can, because I can fill the world with opposition. So if this woman put pain and hate into the world because she killed somebody I loved, I can pay forward a lot more love to other people to replace that, because I really do think that love and kindness are kind of this like antidote to hate and to pain. And
Mm.
that's kind of how kindness and random acts of kindness has ended up being my purpose. And it's helped me tremendously, because I think we need, when we lose somebody, especially in that type of way, we lose control. We have no control over that, and we're not able to change it, but I can still have an impact on the world in a positive way, which is what makes me feel like I have a purpose and it
Oh,
gives meaning to my life.
absolutely. Man, I couldn't agree more. And I wanted to get your opinion, and this leads great to something I want your opinion on. And that is your quote that says self-love and acts of kindness must coexist, that they feed off of
Right.
each other.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah, because otherwise you become codependent, right? Because if you are just like giving to others and 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 never taking time to love on yourself and
how did I lose you again? Supposed to have great internet at this
I don't know.
spot. Supposed to have fantastic internet here.
I know I'm also at a co-working space.
Oh,
You want me to say that again?
yeah. Can you?
Yeah. Yeah, I could totally say that again. Um,
Good.
so if you're constantly giving to others and giving to others and giving to others, and you're never stopping that train to give to yourself and sustain your own well-being, then it's, if you're over giving and under sustaining yourself, you're not as able and ready to give to others in the way that you might want to. So it's like you got to fill up your cup so that you continue to overflow. And sometimes that might mean taking a step back from giving and being generous and caring for others to just nurture yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the words that drives me nuts in the English language is selflessness.
Right, because especially with altruism, it's like that'll never be completely divorced from the self. Like the self will always play a role in that.
And how can I serve Megan if I show up as less than myself today? Right?
Yeah.
Right? Like I need to take
Well,
time. Go ahead.
the one caveat to that though is I think mood state, because I've on again, off again had a relationship with depression. And there have been times when I've been really depressed, but I've still gone out and done random acts of kindness anyway, because they're so good for elevating the mood and
Right.
getting biofeedback from the world that what you do matters. Um, that would be the one caveat, I think.
Yeah, and I think at least for me, as like the more I do for myself, the better I can serve others.
Right.
Right? It may seem selfish that I need to go do a workout before I interview you today, but I know by doing that, I put myself in the best place to serve.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about your random acts of kindness and what an awesome mission that's been to for me just to sit back and watch and just realize that like seeing the joy on other people's faces. I'm like, man, that's what life's about. Talk us through the process of creating that and where it's led you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Um, well, as I said, I just felt at that big transition of my life, I felt very lost. And I also felt very depressed, which I think is a normal part of your dark days. And I started going for walks out out and about, because that was really something for me that was very soothing, that was exercise within reach,
Mhm.
because hardcore exercise was just unaccessible at that moment for me. So I started going for walks, and as I was going for walks, I would sometimes pick flowers and give them to people. And then and then I just really lit up from that, and then that kind of led to other really silly and small acts of kindness. And before you knew it, my friends found out that I was doing random acts of kindness, and they're like, you need to document and share these for people to see, because it's so awesome. And I think that if you created this content as an example for people to follow, then you could really make some real change. So yeah, so I started making little videos about it, and that was really the spot for me initially, because I'm a natural born storyteller. I'm very creative. So I love all things video, photography, storytelling. Um, and it just so happens that as I was telling these kindness stories online, they kind of became popular. And then I was like, okay, I guess I should keep doing this kindness thing.
And what was it? What were you getting from it?
I was getting a reason to be in the world. It was like any content as a journalist that I was creating before, I just felt like went in the bucket and just disappeared and really didn't have a lot of meaning to it. Versus when I was making little videos about kindness, um, I was getting a lot of like comments and feedback, and people were really appreciating it. So I was feeling like, oh, this is making a difference to people. There was response, I think.
What do you have one moment that like stands out to you that an act of kindness, you're like, okay, this is something I have to go fully into?
Yeah, I mean, probably just the first one when and it was the first video that I ever made when I had heard about this girl who had recently lost her dad, and then me and another person went to bring her a bouquet of flowers. And it was just so moving to me to be able to take my pain that I had gone through losing my dad, and I brought flowers to this girl who had also lost her dad fairly recently. And I was like, wow, what the heck? I can actually take my pain and use it to comfort someone else. And that really did away with another block of depression, because I felt like, okay, my suffering is not for nothing. My suffering is for me to be able to compassionately relate to others and be able to comfort them.
Wow. Yeah, your experience was meant to be for you to be relatable.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a lot. It's been a lot of processing, but once I connected those pieces of like, you know, God is not a man with a magnifying glass, and I am not an ant, and he's trying to burn my feelers off. It's just like I've suffered, and now I have the opportunity to be able to take all the lessons from my pain and be able to embrace another human being who needs it.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I love that you stepped forward to that and that you found your purpose and mattering through serving others, right?
Hmm.
Through showing up for others. And I think that's such a huge thing. I think sometimes we think that purpose and mattering is going to find us if we just sit. But I believe a lot of times it's when we are in action and when we're creating motion that we're going to find that. It may not be what we thought it was going to be, but it'll arrive. It'll show itself because we are creating forward momentum.
Yeah, that, and I think we think that purpose or that mattering has to be this colossal thing. And really, for me, I found it in just the simple acts of good that make people smile.
So how do we share that message? Because I 100% agree. I think people, especially our younger generation, that's really like, I want to find my purpose. I need to find my purpose. How do we message that so that people realize it is actually your purpose is very small acts of whatever it is you're doing. It's not a huge one-time moment.
Sure. I think the overall message to get out to people is that how long does it take to do a random act of kindness? Like not that much time, right? So instead, I think it's a matter of replacing one behavior for another. We dedicate a lot of time to just being on our phones scrolling, which
Mhm.
is actually very destructive for our mental health, as we know, based on any given number of studies that's out there. And I think if you replace that habit, at least 15 minutes of that habit, to when you're at the grocery store, give somebody a compliment and then go through the checkout line and buy the person working the checkout line, buy them a candy bar and just see what it does also for you when you do that.
Yeah, it's so funny you bring up that example because I have talked about this numerous times about just interacting with the grocery store clerks is like one of my favorite things to do because
Yeah.
so many people that go through the line and never acknowledge them as a human, right? Like it's just like a process of getting in, getting out. Whereas I like to call 'em by name, I like to ask how their day is going.
Yeah, me too.
If
I
it's
like to
just
make sure that I'm not on my phone. Like
no, yeah, because I mean, think about that. Like And it's crazy to me that that stands out in today's world, that like actually not being on your phone, addressing somebody by name and asking how their day going is such a rare thing
I
that it
know.
really makes somebody's day.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy. So that leads perfectly into what your focus now is, which is
Sure.
advocating for the acts of kindness into lifestyle, like making it part of our life choices because of the mental health benefits. All right, you're back.
You're back. You're back.
Perfect. We're
So
back.
what were you saying?
So that leads us perfectly to your current focus, which is advocating for acts of kindness and a lifestyle because of mental health benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah. For a while there, I was creating a lot of content, and I've kind of shifted away from that just because um, I want to get the message out there that incorporating random acts of kindness into your life on a regular basis can do a lot for how you feel. And also, I think has the capacity to just get you out of your house, reconnected with people, out of isolation. And it's really just an opportunity too for like fresh ideas. Um, but when we're talking about the connection between kindness and our mental health, there's so many indicators there that this is something that's good for you that can be very helpful just to at least shift your mood state,
Mm,
and also your thoughts about yourself. Because if you're depressed and you're thinking, well, I'm a worthless pile of garbage who is not doing anything for this world and I don't matter and life is meaningless. If you are isolating and that is the type of mentality that you have, if you get outside and you start getting reconnected to people in the real world, there's so much that random acts of kindness can do for you because there have been studies done to show that when you engage in random acts of kindness, your body releases a lot of feel good chemicals like the endorphin, the serotonin, the things that you are kind of missing, I think, in your brain when you're depressed. So there's the chemical aspect of it. And then there's also the getting reintegrated back into society and feeling like you're accepted part of it. And also the biofeedback aspect that you get when you give somebody a compliment and you actually physically see that their face lights up and they get excited, it excites you. And then you really get these small pieces of evidence that what you do matters. And when you repeat that behavior again and again and again, then your brain starts to get this message um, in more of a concrete fashion of like what I do matters. And that's something I think when we're depressed that we need more of in our lives.
yes. And
The
isn't it
end.
crazy? No, I love it. I love it. And isn't it crazy that what you said sounds so simple, right? Like if we go out and we're
Mhm.
nice to other people, it not only makes us feel good, it physiologically puts our body in better states, our mind in better states.
Yeah.
Yet so many of our habits and what we're being marketed to are actually bad for us.
Yes, that's correct. So we have to it's the hardest thing that you'll ever do and also the simplest thing you'll ever do because I think especially when you're depressed, and I'm not saying this in a vacuum like I'm judging depressed people, like I've
No,
lived through depression, so I'm actually speaking through for myself, is that like in the times when I've been at my worst, all I've wanted to do is disconnect from people, isolate and stay home, maybe even be on my phone and judge other people for how much better their lives look than
right,
mine, which is like the worst possible thing you could do. And you actually have to like force yourself to get up, get moving, and do something different, even if you're not in the mood to. Like I would be so salty when I would go for those walks. You know what I mean? When I
yeah,
said
yeah,
earlier, one of the things that helped with my depression was going for walks, and I would just be like, "Oh, don't want to do this. All I wanted to do was just lie in bed.
right.
But my therapist is like, you got to get moving. You got to force yourself to, even if you go for like a 10-minute walk, get yourself up out of bed and get get moving. That's like part one, and I just found that the other acts of kindness just added an extra upward spiral.
Yeah. And I love it, right? Because you're actually doing things for other people, which in turn pays you back,
Yeah,
and
exactly right.
and that's so critical. I think, and that would be a great thing I would share with our community. If you're struggling a little bit, if you're in a spot where you're like, you're just not feeling like your normal self, like you're kind of in maybe a rut or whatever you call it, go do something nice for somebody else.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be something super big,
No.
because, and that's what I mean is that like when you're down, like those really big things can be really inaccessible. Um, and so starting with what you can is great.
Yeah, and we all can do something, right? Is that you believe that?
Most of us.
Most of us. Nine,
Yeah.
like how much percentage of the people listening right now, how much
For
percentage?
people that are able to.
Yeah. All right. Talk to me about, you got a PDF out there. I saw a free guide. So I would love for our community members to actually go on your website and get their own change makers action plan.
Yeah, it's free dizzle. It's on
Who
my
doesn't?
website. Who doesn't
Again,
love free
another
dizzle?
random act of kindness. You're gonna just show up in my email box.
Yeah, I just created a little guide called the Changemakers Action Plan that kind of helps people start asking themselves the deeper questions in their lives and trying to find ways to marry together the things that they're passionate about with new activities to make a difference.
Okay, so what's the first step? What's the first thing you think they got to do to get started on that?
I think that there are a certain number of questions that you can walk yourself through and literally get it down on paper, like what lights me up, what brings me joy, what am I really good at, so that you can kind of start seeing these concentric circles that overlap of like, oh, I'm really good at this. These are my skills. These are my unique abilities. Like this is where the need in the world is, and this is where they overlap.
Yeah, I love it. I call that like taking inventory, right? Like looking at ourselves and
Inventory.
actually
Mhm.
asking ourselves some of these questions of that bring us to our moments that kind of take us off autopilot that we kind of live our life by at times.
Sure, yeah, and I don't ever want to make it sound like anybody ever has to do that alone. There's so many resources out there to be able to seek assistance. And you can work through things with a therapist if that's needed, or a life coach
Yeah.
if
So
that's needed, or find a support group, you know.
yeah, there's so many ways, and there's something out there for almost everybody, I would believe.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right, I gotta ask you, Megan, before I let you go, what's up with
Yeah.
the dinosaur costume and how'd that come to be?
Sheer desperation, sheer desperation. Listen, the pandemic was what it was. And I think we all had weird ways of coping with that. Yeah, and wearing a plastic inflatable dinosaur costume is exactly how I coped. I was tremendously sad that I didn't feel like I could go out and do random acts of kindness anymore in the way that I used to be able to, because involves a certain degree of like closeness with humans, and of course we were discouraging that with social distancing. So I figured if I put a mask on and I put a plastic bubble around myself that happens to be in the form of a T-Rex, I can go out and do random acts of kindness. And I called it the Kindosaur.
Yeah.
So I haven't done it much anymore because let me tell you, it gets hot and sweaty in that costume, like so unimaginably hot. But yeah, during the time of the pandemic, I was running around in a dinosaur costume because I was desperate.
That is so. What was the funniest reaction you got to the kind of sore?
I mean, all of it. I was actually so surprised how much kids loved it, because I would go into grocery stores and I would either buy bouquets of flowers in the grocery store, or I was buying food for like food drives, and I would just be walking around the grocery store shopping in a T-Rex costume. And I think now, like we're all struggling with this pandemic and just having the worst time ever. And then you're like, is that a T-Rex shopping for groceries? And the kids just adored it. And it really, I was so excited to bring smiles to children.
And it met all the requirements.
It did.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you're
had my mask on underneath there and everything. I was like, I'm wearing my mask.
so will we see a return of the kind of sore anytime soon?
I guess I should bring it back by popular demand. I should probably.
Do you still get requests for that?
I do. My friends are like, where's the dinosaur? When are we doing this again?
It's awesome. Megan, thank you so much for joining us. Wait for you. All right, Megan, you're back.
And we're back.
All right. I apologize for the lag there on Zoom.
Okay. It's okay.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with us and allowing us to share it with our community.
I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your time. It's been really fun.
Where can our audience stay connected with you and support you on your mission to continue random acts of kindness around the world?
Well, they can go to thekindeffect.com, or they can find me on Instagram at thekindeffect.
And be sure to get over and download your free guide, Changemakers Action Plan, and start implementing this in your lives.
Amen.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you.